Market Lens is all about financial freedom and independence. But that's just one aspect of life. If you want to achieve overall success, you need a little more than financial smarts. You need the mindset, the vision, and the strategies to move to the mission. This is where the blueprint comes in. At the blueprint, we sit down with successful people who build their life from the ground up. They tell us about their stories, their strategies, their mindsets, and give us insights into their lives. In this special episode, we had a conversation with Muyiwa Ariyo, the Deputy Managing Director of Mainstreet Capital. Muyiwa has 17 years worth of experience as an investment banker in Nigeria's financial services landscape. As an alumnus of the Lagos Business School and the Nanyang Business School of Singapore, he brings a rich blend of academic insights and practical leadership. When he's not in the boardroom, you can find him knee-deep in philanthropic exploits or on the golf course, perfecting his swing. Let's dive into Muyiwa's early life to see what made him the man he is today. So, before we start, diving into your mind, what do you think is one thing off the top of your head, right now today that prevents people from getting what they want financially or even out of life?
Well, I think most importantly for me would be indecision. Indecision for most people. You need to be decided on what you want to do. So I think for most people that I see, indecision is the inhibitant factor that holds.
So when you say indecision, is it like they don't know what they want, or they know what they want but they are not very settled in of themselves, where their mindset is not aligned to what they want, or their actions and their actions are not aligned to.
Well, I think even when you may think you know what you want, but your actions are not, like you rightly stated, are not aligning with what you think you want. And it could also be a factor of, I don't even know. I think I know, but truly, I don't even know. And so I think these are major factors that hold people back from being able to beyond a certain level.
So how did you arrive at what you wanted? I mean, you're in the finance sector. You could have as well gone into hospitality, medicine. How did you arrive at what you wanted?
That's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question, and I'll take you through it. I remember when I graduated from University of Ibadan, I'd wanted to join the Nigerian police force.
Okay.
I'd actually wanted to go into the ASP cadet course of the Nigerian police. And I'd actually gone through a couple of the interviews leading up to me going to join the academy in Kano. And one fateful afternoon, I was somewhere in VI. This was 2003. I was somewhere in VI with a couple of my friends. And then I got a call from the then MD of Greenwich, who then asked me to come see him. And I'd gone to see him, and he wanted to find out what my plans were for life. I think he's had cause to discuss with my dad, and my dad had mentioned to him that I wanted to join the police academy. And he just couldn't understand why I would want to do that. So he called for me to come, and I went to meet him, and we had a conversation, and I said to him that, well, I'm interested in joining the police academy. And he was like, well, all right, I should, do I know anything about investment banking? I said, well, to the extent that I used to read, yes, I read about it. I knew a bit about it, at least theoretically. I knew I could speak to a few of it. And said, okay, I was going to come for exams back then at Greenwich. And I was like, I don't want to come for an exam. I just want to go and join the police force. And he says, okay, but they're not ready. They haven't called you yet. So why don't you just come over and let's start this process and see how it goes. So I came in, and then I wrote I remember the test at the time. I passed, and I was able to pass because naturally I used to read about stocks, I used to read about the market. So I just had a good idea of what uh, what it took. So I scaled through the test stage, and then I came for the interview. Even then, I was still saying to myself that I was going to end up in the police force. So I came for the interview, and then I also scaled through, and then I was asked to come and resume. I remember my first conversation with my MD back then after I joined Greenwich. I said to him that I would start and see how it goes, but that along the line, if I got called to the police academy, I would leave. And he says, that's a deal. It's fine, but I should come and resume. And then I resumed, and the rest, they say, is history. I got into investment banking then, and I haven't looked back ever since then. I got into it, and I developed interest, and I just said to myself, okay, I want to make a career out of this, and that's where I've been all the while.
Okay, I don't think I can. I mean, I don't think I can imagine you as a police officer.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
Yeah. So it sounds like you started it before you kind of developed interest in it, right?
Yeah, I started it, and then luckily for me, I came in to the industry at the time when we had the banking consolidation. So it piqued my interest, and Greenwich at the time was quite involved in a lot of the deals going on at the time in the market. And of course, we as young investment bankers were carried along in the process. And so we had to develop interest very quickly. We had to develop knowledge very quickly. We had to develop capacity very quickly. And I think that helped. And so before we knew it, before I knew it, it became my life. It became my all. That's all I just wanted to do. I remember one time my MD called me and said, "Do you still want to go to the police academy?" And I said, "No, let's forget about it. This is where I want to be," and that's it.
Okay, so it sounds like, well, for me, listening to this, it's you have to have that level of openness, I guess, to try new things, even though at the beginning it may not really feel like that's where you want to be.
Well, I guess life in itself is one that requires one to be open. When you're closed up,
Yeah.
trust me, it doesn't help you in any form. I think it's always very important to be very open because life really can change at any point in time. And if you're not open, then it becomes very difficult for you to adapt. You must have the mind of openness to be able to deal with issues as they come. And then, of course, where you need to adjust, you must tell yourself the truth that you need to adjust. A lot of times people unnecessarily take on battles that they shouldn't take on because they don't want to adjust. They're set in their ways and they want every other person to conform to their own way. So it becomes very difficult. I think, yes, you shouldn't be pandering to everything that comes your way. But when reality is reality, when it stares you in the face and you know that the best course of action at the point in time is to deter, then you have to do it. It's like it's like a captain who's sailing a ship, and of course you've drawn all the maps, you've drawn all your, put everything together, you know your course. But along the line, the course is one that would endanger your life and the life of your crew. You must take that hard decision at that point to either, change course, that at least will save your own life and the life of your crew members. Just take that decision. You shouldn't be stuck on the fact that, well, this is where I said I was going to take, and that is where I'm going to take, endangering your life and the life of your men. So that's life. That's the reality of life. Openness is part of life.
Yeah, so I even heard of, I think Jeff Bezos said you have to be, hard about your what you want to achieve, but flexible about, And there was something you said earlier, even before we started filming, where, even when you fail, perseverance and determination. How do you know how to switch between being flexible and being rooted? Because I have to assume that you have to have some level of sadness. You need to plant your feet, in some certain scenarios, right? So how do you now navigate that? So okay, in this scenario, I need to, because even when you look at let's say the finance world now, you look at situations where Snapchat refused to sell to, was it Facebook, at I think $1 billion valuation some years ago, and so now today they are worth. Meanwhile, Yahoo refused to. I think Google wanted to sell themselves to Yahoo at a particular point, and Yahoo refused that. And now look at where Google is, look at Yahoo is. So it's people making similar decisions but having vastly different outcomes. So I think on some level, is there a way to know, okay, this is when I should plant myself and say no matter what happens, I will persevere. And this is when I should go, okay, I think I need to pivot, I need to be a bit more flexible. Is there a way to be able to tell in those situations?
Okay. Again, I would say that some of these things are not cast in stone. But the point is that you must have, when you're going into any process or any journey, business decisions, life decisions generally, from the onset you would have, thought of the process. Where you're going to, what do you want to do, what do you need to get to that point. But it's also very important that even when you have your plans well set out, there should always be that plan B and at times plan C. They would be there. But you say to yourself, you're not going to change course from plan A to plan B on the first order that you meet. So even when you meet orders on the road for plan A, you continue to scale those orders. But reality would come in if, you now get to a particular point where it's just clear that you can't forge ahead on the plan that you had initially. At that point, you would have to take that decision whether to then switch to plan B or even at times to switch to plan C. What you don't do is to switch at the first battle that you meet on the way or the first order that you meet on the way. You're not switching at that stage because you already have your plan. So you're going to keep trudging on, following the set rules that you've put in place for yourself to achieve that goal. But when you get to a point where you then have to pull out, then you just don't have a choice. That's why even in investment, you realize that we would have clauses that would allow you to be able to exit at a particular period or at a particular level. And you could also have reasons to take decisions that will enable you pull out, even if you don't want to, even if your own gut feelings tells you we could still do more. But those clauses were put in place simply because we've taken into cognizance the fact that things could switch. And when it's going to switch, it could switch very quickly such that you get trapped. So you may have to just pull out at a particular period, not because you want to pull out, not because you think or your gut feelings or experiences said to you, I need to stay put here. We could still make some margins. We could still, cough in some mileage. It may just be better for you to exit at that point in time. So it's just, that's the way it is with life and business decisions. You must keep your plans open, knowing fully well that if anything goes wrong, then you have the next plot to go to. When you don't have any is when you run into trouble, because then you at the time you're meant to switch, you find it difficult to switch because you didn't put any plans in place. So then you keep struggling, and if you're not careful, you just kill it from there.
Okay. Let's look at your early life, how you got to this point, because you said a lot of things that I know you just said don't switch on your first battle, which is so I want to know how your childhood, because a lot of decisions we make as adults are influenced by what we've gone through as children, right? So how was growing up for Muyiwa Ariyo?
Growing up was quite interesting. I grew up in the city of Kaduna.
Oh, okay.
I think growing up there has shaped my life in a significant way. It was a very it was a class society, but one that appreciated everybody around. And so you find yourself in a school where you'd have children of military governors, former military governor, former head of state. But when we're all in school, in our uniforms, we're all the same. You don't know who is the child of anybody. We just band it together. And so created a level of some form of equal society, right? For us as kids, you didn't know whose father was this. Yes, you could have an idea of this person's father was this or that. You would have kids in my class whose fathers were maybe majors. And in the same class, you have somebody else whose father is a colonel. But we all were friends, irrespective of what rank your father carried, or whether, like my own dad, who was a civilian, who was a lawyer. All of us grew up together, and we saw ourselves as equals, naturally. Yeah, and I grew up in a home where my dad was quite firm. Discipline was the hallmark of the day. But at the same time, he allowed us to thrive. He allowed us to have a mind of our own. And for me in particular, because I'm the first. So very quickly, I developed that knack for leadership. I developed that knack for trying to ensure that I was in charge of my environment and to be sure that everybody was okay around me. And I think I grew up with a mentality of leadership, knowing fully well that you must look at yourself as the last line of defense. Nobody's coming to save you, but your responsibility is to save others. So I grew up with that mentality, and I think it's shaped my life up until this time. So for me, while I'm striving to get ahead, while I'm striving to do well for myself, for my family, for the society, I also believe in that notion of respect for everybody you meet along the way. Irrespective of their class in society, you just carry everybody along as much as you could. So that's Muyiwa in a nutshell growing up.
Okay. So earlier you said you were in a school where you had children of different parents, ex-military presidents. Would you say that has kind of shaped your ability to, I guess, conceptualize success? Because I've seen situations where people are not used to certain things. Maybe you grow up in abject poverty, and then you can't really conceptualize what, let's say, making 20 million naira is, and that kind of sets a mental limit.
Yeah.
So would you say growing up and rubbing shoulders with people of that caliber kind of remove those possible mental blocks to say that, oh, if this guy's son is my friend, then I can easily meet people and do things?
Let me tell you a story. When I was younger, the Marlboro cigarette.
What?
Marlboro cigarette. The cigarette.
Yes.
Marlboro cigarette. They used to have this advert. And then they had this cool guy, who had a convertible Mercedes.
Okay.
And used to wear a very lovely wristwatch. And had a beautiful home with a deck overlooking the waters. And then he would drive his convertible, into the home, his house, his property, and then park. Cool looking guy. And he would come down with his Marlboro in his hand, and then he would go sit on the deck. It was an advert on Marlboro, and I said to myself, I want to be like this guy. I want to drive a Mercedes. I want to wear cool wristwatches. I want to have a beautiful house with a deck overlooking the water. I've always conceptualized that, growing up, that this is how I want to be. But of course, I also knew that getting there would require some level of hard work. It wasn't just going to jump. Yes, we were given the background to at least have some good education. And then I knew that from there, you have to then push yourself to get to some level in life. Of course, coupled up with the environment where I grew up, the kind of people I had around me, the kind of people that I saw, I just knew it at that time that I want to be successful, and I think that's been the story. Yeah,
Yeah, so it seems, I mean, it sounds like your environment did play a significant role,
absolutely.
being where you were, and even, the discipline that you said that, your dad instilled. So on one end, so what I'm hearing is, on one end, your external showed you what was possible, what you could get, with the Marlboro adverts, and even that people around you, and then your father's training kind of showed you, okay, with discipline and being the last line of defense. What do you say to people who think, you know, um, school is a scam? Because there is that saying, when people just say it mindlessly, but I've actually heard people come to give, I guess, more intellectual reasons. I'm talking about how the curriculum, hasn't really changed in the last couple of years, and while the world moves forward, the level of education has stayed stagnant. I know probably would you say back in your days, education played a more vital role in society today, in society then, and how do you think that compares with, the education you get growing up to society today? Now, of course, there are levels of education you will get that are top tier. If you go to Harvard, of course, you are more likely to succeed. But how about like the basic education for the regular middle class family in Nigeria? Would you say that if going by that level of education, people can still, that at least gives a sense of what is possible to the regular person?
Well, I think when we were growing up, the level of decadence we now see in the education standard, particularly maybe from the public schools as we have them today, we didn't have it back then. For us, I schooled mostly in Nigeria, and they're all public schools, apart from my MBA. Most schools I went to were all public schools, and what they did, those schools then, they give you the background, they give you the confidence, they give you the energy to go out there and do great things. Now, we'll be deceiving ourselves to say that everybody will pass through that system, turned out good, turned out successful. We'll be deceiving ourselves. That's certainly not true. But generally, the educational system at the time gave most of us the background, the standards to say to yourself, well, you can do well, and then you all want to go there and then challenge yourselves to be able to do well. However, I agree that to a large extent, as we have it today, I strongly think that, as particularly I'm going to speak about Nigeria. When we say education is a scam, I do not believe in that, because I've seen a lot of people who today in this society, perhaps they're doing okay, they're doing well actually. But I think that with some level of education, they would have been greater than they are today. And some of them acknowledge this fact. Whether we like it or not, what education does for you is that it gives you that background. That's why if you see the developed society, you go to the UK, you go to the US, for them, university education is not what they would so much push for. If you can afford it, access student loans, you want to do that, go there. You don't want to go there, fine. However, the elementary education system is made compulsory for people. The reason is because that should give you some level of access in the future. At least you know that you went through the basic education. And with your basic education, you can then do greater things. Yeah, we agree with a lot of people that didn't go to university and they're doing excellently well. even better than a lot of people that went to university. And we learn names that didn't go to the university system and are doing well. But the background, you must have gone through that basic elementary background to give you that push, right? And then you can then aspire to do other things. But we shouldn't then discard education. I don't think I want to go that lane at all.
So, how was your relationship with money growing up? Because one thing I know is personally, one thing that helped me, I remember growing up, my dad taught me how to play chess. And he also taught me the difference between assets and liabilities. That was the first financial lesson I got. And that has really kind of tuned my mind up until now, because now I'm thinking, of life in terms of assets and liabilities, right? So when I get money, I'm thinking, okay, I need to build an asset base. And I meet friends that, they don't have that mentality. Like they make a lot of money. I have a friend who has a GLE, right? And he drives around, but he doesn't have land. He doesn't have any assets. He just has his cars and his money, cash. So how was your relationship with money growing up?
Okay. The notion of money. Usually, money is meant to be spent. That's what we say.
Yes.
It's meant to be spent. However, for some people, the idea of money is to be deployed towards assets acquisition. You want to build homes, you want to have land, you want to have, financial notes, stocks, and the rest of them, bonds that you can call yours and keep, so that in the future you can then, you need to call them in, you can call them in to be able to have funds to do other things. I'll give an example. I have a friend who, for him, I remember we outside our career, and some of us were bothered about the fact that the first thing we needed to do was to get a home that we could call ours. He didn't believe in that. For him, his belief was, I'd rather have money that I can use to do business, money that I can use to keep churning more money, making more money. And that he used to say to us that homes will always be there. If there's no land to buy, I will purchase a house. And it wasn't wrong in his own ideology. It wasn't wrong at all. As long as he was deploying the funds into creating more businesses, and it was just fine. For a few others, like someone like me, I think I believe in a balance, such that. So my own belief is, if I'm putting money in properties, for example, it's because I want to be able to use those properties to be able to access funding for other businesses. If I have a property and the property I can't use that property to access other funding to be able to create new businesses, it's useless for it's just there. It's just what it is. It's a property. My belief in life is, if I have money, I would rather want to see how I can use that money to deploy and make, more money. But of course, there must be a balance that you also want to live a good life. So you must be able to balance it out. Because for some, all they want to do is live the good life. So again, you need to speak to your friend who has the GLE. All you care where you see him driving the GLE around, but he may be deploying funds to other things that you don't know.
That's true.
It's a possibility, and then you just see him driving the GLE around, but he's doing other things that's probably not known to you. So at times it's just a function of what you think. For me, money is meant to be spent, but then spend it wisely.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. You surprised me when you said money is meant to be spent. I thought you'd go, as an investment professional, you have to put money aside. But yeah, okay. So, but did you always have this mentality growing up? So early on in your life, you knew money was meant to be spent, or is this something you've kind of gathered due to your experience in the industry, and as time went on?
Well, when we were younger, we used to have pocket money. They used to give us pocket money. And I remember early on in my life, I already, I think I had my first stint at doing anything business. Maybe I was just roughly about 17, 18, and then I partnered with one or two other people to get a contract. And then I remember I had to go to my mom, borrowed money from my mom, put together what I had, called one or two of my other friends to come together, let's put money together, and then we executed the business, and then we did it a couple of times, made money from it. And I remember that, from my own money, I always like to buy good sneakers. I always like to have a nice jeans. I loved lumberjack shirts back in the days, so I'll still get all those things, but I'll still be able to keep some to say, okay, well, if other opportunities come, other businesses come, we can use. But first things first, I'll still buy those things because I wanted to look it.
That means you're making quite a bit of money.
Back in the days, well, I don't know if it was lots of money, but it was okay for us to be able to at least get some good clothes to look good when you go out, and then some money to be able to spend when we go out with our friends, back in the days. And they still want to keep someone to be able to do that thing. So really, it's always been like that. And I think the notion of money for me up to now is still almost the same. Yes, as we grow older, or begin to have kids, begin to think of the future, then maybe you start tilting. You start tilting yourself in a certain way when it comes to money matters. You want to be able to have a good future. You want to be able to. I've always wanted to retire early. My aspiration about life is to retire early. I want to be able to retire, have enough time to play golf, have enough time to travel the world. So I think the next few years is one when I'm going to have to really push myself very hard, at least be able to get to a certain level. And then I know that, okay, from there, investments that one would have made will be enough to take care of, life as we go ahead. And of course, to take care of my family. And of course, you get to a certain level that whatever you have is not just for your immediate family anymore. You have people in society, people you know, people you don't even know, people you don't even have any relationships with, but then you have to be responsible for them, whether they like it or not. So,
okay. You said you started business when you were 17, 18.
Yeah, my first stint at trying to do something was about that age.
Yeah. So how old were you when you made your first million?
My first million.
Yeah. And that's a wrap on Muyiwa's early life. I hope you enjoyed the episode and you learned something. Don't forget to follow us on our social media channels. But that's not all. So stay tuned. Stay safe in the markets.